Hey, welcome back to the Espresso Outlet and Kaleido YouTube channel. My name is Barrett. Today we have a brand new M10. This is the M10 sealed Kaleido roaster, and we're going to do an unboxing. So if you've not gotten one of these roasters, they come in this nice wooden box. It's a crate, and the M10, it's about 80 pounds, so you're probably going to need a little bit of help, maybe putting it up on a table. And then I'm going to show you probably the best way to unbox it. You will see that there are these hinges and you can open up the lid, and a lot of people try to pull the roaster out. But today I'm going to recommend, there's actually a handful of screws around the base. We're just going to go get all these screws out. Okay, so there's about 16 screws. You're probably going to want some sort of like a power drill like I have here to pull them out if you're going to open it up this way. Otherwise, you could do lifting out method, but this should be much easier. So we'll take the top of the crate off and set it aside. And you'll notice that it comes zip tied to the pallet, which is really nice. When we first started getting these, sometimes they'd want to break free in the crate despite all the packaging, and we would have usually this part get dented. So we've taken some extra precautions, worked with the manufacturer to get them to you as safe as possible. Now there are going to be a few more screws on the bottom, and if you need help getting those out, it should be the standard Allen key that comes with your roaster. So let's cut these ties and get it opened up real quick. Okay, so to get started, make sure you're probably gonna have your Allen key. I just have one that's handy and maybe some pliers to hold this nut in place. And they shouldn't be on there very tight anyway. So usually just getting it started, you may need the Allen key if it's wanting to spin. In this case, this first one I do not. There should be 4, 2 on the front and 2 on the back. So let's get them unhooked. Okay, so in my case, I really didn't need to use the Allen wrench. Sometimes you do. I just used a little pliers just to loosen them up a little bit. Only 2 of them are real tight. We're going to cut these tie wraps. They're really big tie wraps, and we're just going to put them off to the side. It's really what keeps it in place during transit. And then we have the roaster itself. So to begin with, usually they have it kind of tied off. Try not to tear up your bag. We have like our saran wrap type wrapping that holds it all together. Then we can start loosening the bag. Okay, so here's our first look at the M10. It's a good time to inspect it for damage. It doesn't happen very often, but there is sometimes some shipping damage that happens when the UPS people, for whatever reason, drop it real hard or something. At the back, we have a spare heating element in this tube. In the middle, we have is kind of like a funnel extension for the top of your roaster. And then at the front, we have the remainder of your accessories. So if this was a dual model, you would also have a tablet included in this. This, I believe, is just the Pro. Okay, so something real important, now that we have the roaster taken off, we have our nuts that came with it to hold the roaster in place. And since we haven't tried this unit out yet, just in case we needed to do a return, you'll want to make sure to keep all of your packaging supplies. So go ahead and put all these back on real quick. There should be some washers that may have stayed on the roaster that you want to grab. Let me grab these. And it looks like one of the nuts kind of slipped away from me, but I'll find it in a little bit and save it. So real important to keep all of your packaging on any of the Kaleido roasters. And pretty much all the roasters are the same. If you have the M1 or the M2, you're going to pull it out the top. the M6 or the M10, we're gonna pull it out the bottom like this. So kind of nice that they have the crate set up that way. On the back, we have our spare heating element, as I mentioned. I'm just going to clip the tube and store it in my crate. You'll have just kind of a various number of zip ties. To begin with, you have one on the back. Make sure not to cut the wire. And that's going to be your main power supply. Then it has a tie wrap and a protector for the plug that you'll want to pull off. On the side, we have our tap collection bin. It also has a zip tie to keep it in place. Don't want it falling out and getting bent during shipping. A piece of plastic. And then on the front, kind of last but not least, we have our chute door that has one more tie wrap on it. And we'll pull that off. So there's our roaster. It's really not that hard to pull out. Just takes a little bit of muscle. Has a little sign, and we're pretty much ready to go. Now there is one more thing that I do like to do, and there's these little L brackets on the side. They're really just for shipping, so go ahead and remove those. Okay, so if you need it, grab your Allen key out of the bag and take these screws out. It can take a second. Then you can remove these L brackets. They're just merely there for shipping. But you will want to retain the screw and put the screw back in. If you want to leave them on, it doesn't affect the roaster at all, but I like it looking just a little bit cleaner without them. Okay, so let's start going through some of the things that come with it. You'll see it comes in a bag off to the side. Depending on which model you have, it's going to come packaged slightly differently. On the smaller units, usually the bean cooling tray is separate and all the accessories are off to the side. So we have our Allen keys. It has every size that you need to service this machine, as well as a large key to remove the drum, as well as our trier. Put the trier in with the arrow pointed up and then rotate it down. On the smaller models, it doesn't let you pull it out. On the bigger ones, you can pull it out upside down, but I like to put it in down. We have a USB-A to USB-A cable if you're going to use it with either the tablet, if you got one of the tablets, or if you're wanting to use it as a Pro with USB. Now, one of the things that confuses a lot of people is just because it has USB on the dual, at least as of today, it's not set up to connect directly to a laptop on the dual only. The USB is only for the tablet. If you have the Pro, it also has a USB cable, but with the proper drivers, you can plug into your laptop and connect just directly to your laptop. So just letting you know, that is probably the main difference between the Pro and the dual. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes you get lucky and they have their new kind of cloth style filter that they've been including with some of the roasters, not all. We have our Kaleido warranty information and a stir spoon. So a lot of this stuff, like the USB cable and the Allen keys, I'm probably just going to put off to the side because I don't necessarily need it at the moment. The cooling tray, this one comes pre-assembled, but some of them do not. On some of the smaller roasters, what you have to do is you have to just put the screws in. It only takes a minute. That's just because it doesn't fit in the crate. Put that in the front. And then let's see. I think we're pretty much ready to go, except for our hopper on the top. So this is an extension to the hopper, and you'll find out how handy it is. First few times you load beans, you don't necessarily have to use it, but it is nice to have. And it is simply placed on the top with no fasteners. It sits on top like so. So just kind of overall function of the roaster, it does have the ears that fold up. If you're curious about how to get them to stay up, these knobs actually rotate. So you can kind of rotate them outwards and they'll stay in the unlocked position, and then you rotate them and they'll pop back in. So if you're wanting to lock it up, make sure you kind of got to fiddle with it a little bit, but it's not too hard once you understand that. Off to this side, we have our chaff bin. It's a simple tray that removes from the roaster. Works very well. Try to do this backwards. We have our bean drop. So on the older style, it had like a little lever that you'd flip down. On the new style, it's kind of this crank mechanism. And it does automatically shut for the most part. I do like to make sure that it's nice and closed as I'm roasting. And when you're putting the beans in, you will have to hold it in the open position to allow it to all go in. Next, we have the door to dump all your beans at the very end. So just opens up really easy, closes, and locks into place. So we're pretty much ready to roast and connect to Artisan for the first time. I'm gonna go grab my laptop. Okay, so if you haven't already downloaded Artisan, reach out and download Artisan 2.8.4. Here I have 2.8.3. It's not available for download. 2.8.4 is the latest. And I'm running a Mac today. So a lot of people, what they'll do when they first connect is they'll go over and search for their device and connect. And you'll notice that it says connected, and what it's going to do is it's going to show disconnected or not connected. Now it is in your My Device list, so this is actually how you want it to be as it is at the moment, because we haven't configured Artisan yet. So we're just adding the device to our supported device lists. There are a couple videos out there that are a little bit older that might say slightly different, but this is how the latest version works. Next, we're going to go over to Artisan, and we are going to go to the config menu, machine, and find Kaleido. Now you'll see three different options. Legacy is for the older version, or the board B as it's sometimes referred to. And today we're going to select Serial, and that's for the board C, or the latest version of the board that came with this roaster today. So we're going to click Serial. It's going to ask, since I've used other Kaleido roasters, you're about to lose everything. I'm going to click yes. And it's going to ask for a COM port. Now I've done this in other videos, and where it's a little bit more confusing with like Windows is you're going to have an incoming and an outgoing COM port. With the Mac, you're really only going to have one, so it will be a little bit confusing if you have more than one Kaleido roaster, but as we saw over on our system setting menu, it is this SRS V6, so that is the one that we are going to select and click OK. Now it's going to ask the machine capacity, and since this is a 1.2 kilo, we can type 1.2. Depending upon which machine you have, like for example, I had a M2 the other day, I'm going to type 0.4 for 400 grams. We're going to click OK. So honestly, that is the majority of setting up the machine. I do like to go over here to the port menu, especially for the first time, and make sure that that COM port is selected, because sometimes it might have something different in there, or if you have a Windows computer, you have the incoming and the outgoing, as I mentioned a minute ago. So just make sure it's set correctly. And then on these latest machines, you want it set on 57,600 for your baud rate. On some of the legacy machines, it was 9,600. So if that didn't work, you can go back and select 9,600 for the older legacy machine. But past that, it should be pretty much set up, and it should set it up for you, but I still like to check it. So we are going to click the on button. And you'll see these horseshoes over here for a second. Now, if you continue to see zeros or kind of the horseshoe with no number, that means it is connecting, but it might not be set up quite right. So today we have, it says 15.2. It's kind of fluctuating a little bit between our exhaust temp and our bean temp. But since we are getting values, that means that our machine is set up and connected. Also, when you click that on button, you're gonna see all these buttons show up at the bottom. So on some of the more legacy versions, they were a little bit different depending on if it's pro or dual. For the most part, they're set up identical on the latest version of Artisan. So that's very nice. We also added a couple additional buttons. Now to start heating, I do recommend going through and doing a test of everything before you turn on the elements. So to start with, we're going to click drum. And you can hear the drum just turned on. Turn drum off. Air. Air is going to be your exhaust air. So that turns on. Your cooling is going to be your cooling fans in the front. And these can be the louder fans, but they work. So our basic functions of the roaster is working properly before we turn on the heat. The next thing that I see a lot of people not understanding or just getting at first is you have your air, your drum, your burner, and then you also have this SV, and that is a set value. So in this case today, what I'm going to set it at is about 180. I usually like it a little bit less for some of the smaller roasters. But what this is going to be is it's going to be your preheat temperature. So your charge temp. And you can see on this background that I have loaded, it's set on 178.9 and it's just rounding up to 179. So a lot of people, they'll say, I have it all turned on, but I don't know why it's not heating up. And usually what I recommend is maybe just slide it, let off, and then in this case it has a background so it's going to auto reset. But just to ensure that the machine is receiving that set value, because sometimes when it's a brand new version of Artisan and a brand new install, this SV value doesn't get pushed to the machine. So I usually just give it a quick slide before I do anything else. Now it is very important. You don't want to just turn on your machine and not have your air or your drum running. So I'm going to go ahead and do drum at maybe 80. And air, let's just do 40. But a lot of people, they kind of go overkill on the burner. This does require a dedicated 20 amp receptacle. So if you have a 15 amp, you may run the risk of it tripping, which may happen today because this is a 15 amp receptacle. But I am going to just click burner 80. And start heating. Now, as you can tell on the screen, your environmental temp, it's at the top, or your exhaust temp, it's actually climbing pretty quickly. I mean, this is in degrees Celsius. Now, if you want it in degrees Fahrenheit, you can go to config, temperature, and change it. But I believe your machine has to be in the off mode. So if you're mid-roast, it's going to throw off the roast. But now we're preheating the machine. Now, the first time I recommend probably roasting maybe 3 batches, and it doesn't need to be a full batch of seasoning beans. So it's just gonna be some cheaper beans, maybe some cheap Robusta, just really the cheapest stuff you can find. I noticed on a couple websites the other day that they had quite a few seasoning beans available for $2, $3 a pound. You're probably just gonna wanna run that through the machine, make sure that there's no small metal, any oils or anything for the manufacturing process. I mean, it is a rolled steel, high quality stainless steel, so there is going to be a little bit of that just machining residue on the roaster itself. And also, as you season the roaster, it's going to develop that thin layer of coffee bean oil around the drum and the inside of the roaster. So I'm just gonna let this preheat. We are gonna do a quick roast here in a bit. I'm probably just gonna throw some away that I have that's a little bit older. And maybe we can do just like a quick 400 gram roast. Now on average, your roast, it's gonna take anywhere from, we'll say 8 to 10 minutes for a good roast. It really depends on the background that you choose to load. We have a couple of them online. If you're not a part of our Facebook community, it is the Home Espresso, or not home, we have the Home Espresso Aficionados, but we also have the Kaleido Roasters USA, and that's a dedicated group just for these Kaleido users. And it's been an absolutely fantastic community. A lot of people, they like to share the beans that they're roasting as well as the profiles for Artisan. So I'm gonna let this preheat. We're gonna know that it's up to temperature when it reaches our set value on the ET over here. I'm probably going to want, because we're doing a little bit less, I probably will drop this a little bit. I don't have a different background that's lower, but I will probably turn on the air a little bit higher and we'll have that drop so we can maybe do like a 300 or 400 gram batch. So let's just let her preheat. Okay, so we're back and we have our machine preheated. This is kind of outdoors. I have the garage door open, so sorry if some trucks drive by. It can get a little bit loud from time to time. We have it set to 178, 179. I found some old beans. They're just some old Robusta beans, and they should do fairly well for seasoning. I do recommend doing about 3 batches of seasoning. The first one I will throw out. This is 650 grams, give or take. Did a quick weight on the scale. Make sure that your door is completely shut. Pour your beans in the top. And then on the screen, we're gonna wanna click the start button. A couple pre-check things that I like to do. I like to make sure that my tryer is pointed downwards. And you'll do it at least once. You'll leave the door open from your previous batch. Make sure that it's down and locked. If you've done a couple batches already, check your chaff collection bin every single time and dump it, as well as just make sure that it's shut. So that's kind of the pre-check on the roast. Let's click the start button. And it's going to start trending on the graph. Now these buttons at the bottom are very important. So we're gonna click charge and open up the dump chute. Now for the most part, all your green is going to go in, but you may have to kind of fish a couple down and then make sure that your door is completely shut. So this isn't very many beans in this roaster, being only, it's about half capacity at the moment, a little less. And it's probably gonna run a little bit quickly. But the main thing that a lot of people do forget to do or don't understand at first is to click this charge button. And if you don't click that charge button, what you'll see is your temperature is gonna shoot up very quickly. And that's, you're wanting to dry your beans, you're not really wanting to roast them extremely fast, because when you roast them extremely fast, you're gonna roast the outside. It's kind of like cooking a steak. You're gonna sear the outside and the inside is gonna be underdone, more or less. So what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to go through just a very slow drying process. There are a couple of temperatures on this graph. Maybe not the most ideal background, but it's fine. It's one that I use pretty regularly. And we're just gonna let it go. Now, one of the things with roasting, I do like to use just all your senses, mostly just sight and smell. The tryer is very nice for just seeing where your beans are at. As you're getting through some of that drying phase, you're gonna get some nice grassy scent coming out of the green beans. So that's a good indicator that you're kind of reaching the end of that. You're getting that straw smell. And that's really what you're looking for drying out your beans. You can take a quick look. So they're still just extremely green. It's probably hard to see in the camera, but we're just drying them at the moment. Couple rule of thumb, I don't usually recommend going over 80% burner. I do recommend having the air 30 to 40. That's about the middle of the road. 20 is just almost not enough. You're gonna get a lot more of the smoke just left inside the roaster. You're gonna get that more roasty taste. And as the roast progresses, I kind of like to up my air just to get that smoke out of the roaster. Drum, you can run it at 90% or at 100%. I've started roasting at about 80% drum, and that seems to work a little bit better for me. So probably just starting out 80% burner, 30 to 40% air, and 80% drum are very good starting points. And using our senses today, I can start to smell the beans changing. I can smell them without even looking. They're just becoming just very slightly yellow. Not very yellow, but you can tell that they're starting to change. So what's really cool in Artisan, it's running actually a little bit cold, surprisingly. Maybe I'll bump up the burner a little bit. It's giving an estimated dry time of about 5.5 minutes. I'm probably gonna mark it at 5 because we don't have very many beans in here, but they are turning a nice yellow. And this is our first roast. I will let you know, on a brand new roaster, the elements do usually run a bit hot, so I'm being a little bit more conservative here. As the elements burn in, is what I refer to it as, kind of like a new light bulb or something. Once they reach that point that they've ran for a certain amount of time, they're gonna run that consistent flat value. So your first few roasts on my M6 especially, and I'm kind of anticipating on this M10, it ran so hot. And just running it, I don't know, probably 8 roasts or so, you're going to get that more consistent roast out of it the more you use this machine. So I'm gonna mark dry end. And what's important about that is it does all the calculations inside of Artisan for you. So if you're not clicking these buttons, Artisan's not gonna know what's going on. It's looking for those demarcation points. The turning point, it's gonna be able to see when it hits the bottom and starts going back up. But your dry end and your charge is very important to click. That's probably the #1 thing that I see people mess up when they first get the roaster. When first crack starts, that's gonna be another important, because at the top, it's going to change some of these little indicators, and it's going to say, what does it say? Percent development. So it's going to tell you your percent development. Now, a lot of people, if you're just doing like a classic coffee, you're looking 18 to 20% development. With some of your lighter, fruitier ones, it's gonna be probably considerably less. Now, there's people out there that know a lot more about that than myself, but that's just how I've been roasting personally, and it's worked pretty well for me. So really what we're gonna do is we're gonna hang tight. Our first crack, I'm not sure with these beans, on this background here, it's about 195 degrees. It could be a little bit sooner than that. Let's do a quick check. So they are starting to brown quite a bit. And you can start to smell the roastiness. You're not getting that grassy, kind of wheat smell. You're getting more of the roasty coffee smell starting to come. A couple more things that people ask just while we're sitting here waiting. Can I do this in my house? Now, I'll say yes, but I don't recommend it, because your exhaust coming out, there will be a fair amount of smoke. If you're planning to do it into second crack, you're gonna get a lot of smoke. Now, for the most part, you shouldn't get much smoke in your bean cooling tray if you're roasting correctly. But on the off chance that you have maybe a failed roast and you're dumping those beans, your house is probably gonna be extremely smoky. So I do recommend doing it outdoors in a fairly well ventilated area. Otherwise, you're just gonna get a lot of this, your house is gonna smell really bad. I do know some people that do it under exhaust hoods, but I just prefer outdoors in the garage. So I do hear first crack starting, about 190. We're gonna click first crack. And you can see it says dev percent. I couldn't remember what it said. So it's going to start counting up on the percent development. And I'm probably gonna drop these beans a bit hot. Just since this is a seasoning roast, we don't need them to be like a nice, I say underdeveloped, just a nice light roast. I want it to be a very developed roast. Get those oils out of the beans and continue to roast this. Now, we're not gonna wanna go too hot. This graph is gonna stop at 208 degrees, so we're probably just gonna go the full 208. You can see, it's starting to look a lot like coffee that we're used to. So we're at 202. And at this point, and even just a little bit ago, the beans become exothermic. So let's say we were to dump it now and not turn on the cooling fan, those beans are gonna continue to roast. They could even reach second crack. So very important, these beans, once they start becoming exothermic, they create just a tremendous amount of heat. And we should be dumping here in a second. We're going to click drop. And our cooling fan will turn on. If it doesn't, you can click the button. There are augers on the inside of the roaster to push all the beans out. Sometimes you might get a few in there. I usually leave the door open just as it cools, and that does a pretty good job. It does come with a spoon. I don't have it handy. I have my own spoon right here that I like to use. And you really don't need to stir this very much, but I do like to push it up against the front. And it's pretty crazy, as simple as this bean cooler looks, it's actually kind of double walled so that it gets air all around those beans, even though it's drawing only from the back. And it does a very good job of cooling the beans. I've had a lot of people that are like, man, it looks so simple, but it works so much better than the other bean coolers that I've used previously. So, looks like a really beautiful, this cheap seasoning roast. We're not gonna drink these, unfortunately. They're already cool to the touch. I mean, they're warm. We're gonna let them go another minute, but that's just so fast compared to some of the other roasters out there. I mean, we could stop it now if we needed to. If you have chaff, I do like to kind of give it a shake. We lost a couple beans, unfortunately. At the end, we'll just click cooling off, and we can click the off button on the roaster. So that's it for our maiden roast. Let's take a quick look at the coffee. See if you can see it. Pretty nice coffee beans. And our chaff. So it does a nice job with the chaff collection. There are certain beans, like there's an Ethiopian that I like, and it will make probably 4 times as much chaff as this. So again, very important to dump this out. When I was first roasting initially, I thought someone was smoking kind of near my garage, like a cigarette. And what it was is I had forgotten to dump this for like 2 roasts, and that chaff lit on fire, and it kind of has that cigarette ash smell. So I'd like to dump it every single time. Now, as this machine cools down, we're not going to do another roast today, but as this machine cools down, a lot of people ask me, how do you put it away? I do like to just let the door stay open and leave your exhaust fan on. You can bump it up just as high as it can go. And what it should do eventually is it should reach a temperature that it finds as kind of the safe shutdown point. Make sure to leave your drum running, because if your drum doesn't run, you're going to have a little bit more heat on one side than the other, the top versus the bottom, and your drum may want to warp. So by having it rotate constantly and cool consistently, that's the best way of doing it. So a lot of people, they'll say, why doesn't my drum turn off? That's just a safety measure, just to make sure that it's not going to warp on you. So we're going to let this cool down. It should turn itself off, but I usually look for, I don't know, it's at 104-ish degrees. Probably about 70 degrees is where I would probably unplug the machine. Now, there is no on-off switch. It's just unplug it when you're done. I do recommend storing this unplugged. Leave it unplugged when you're not using it. Give it a good cleaning, and it should be ready to go for the next time that you roast. So I hope that helped you get going today. You can see, I'm not sure how long this video is by the time I edit it, but probably from start to finish, unboxing it and setting it up. I've only been out here for about an hour. This is the maiden roast and a lot of talking. So it didn't take very long. I hope this helps you get your new Kaleido going. If you have any of the new series with the board C, so anything that's being sold from us right now, as of December 2023, your roaster is going to run this way. We do have some legacy YouTube videos out there that's going to be a little bit more involved. It's really not that difficult. That's the roasters that I've been using. I just got a new M2 the other day, and this is the new M10. So this is super easy to use in my opinion. I mean, compared to some of the older ones, you can set it up within minutes. I did get the M2 and I set up the entire thing within about 8 minutes and was already roasting. So thanks again for watching. Make sure to click subscribe and like on the video because that really helps me out. We're going to be doing more with this M10 now that I have the M10 and some of the new boards. We're going to be doing some more roasting videos. So thanks for watching.